Thank you. Let's talk about Astronaut. I'm keeping that taken. And thank you for joining the first installment of Tubular Tuesdays with Coop, work in progress title. Don't worry, OKC Part 2 comes out on Friday. That all out of the way, let's dive. For many years now, there's been a popular debate online of whether or not we actually went to the moon. A debate for which both sides share some reasonable evidence, and I can hear people clicking off as I say that. So now with them gone, let's go a step further and let's see if there might be something even deeper going on at the moon. And assuming that we did make it and it was not faked in Stanley Kubrick's basement or at a military base, then there are some other questions that really need to be answered here. The common perception of July the 20th of 1969 is that three dudes, Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, popped into a rocket, flew to the moon, then Neil and Buzz jumped onto the lunar landing module, flew down, landed, turned on the cameras, and then captain of the operation, Neil Armstrong, climbed down the ladder, took the first steps any man has onto another celestial body, and gave the famous words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Grabbed some rocks, jumped around a little bit, all while Mike Collins sat and watched from the moon's orbit, probably a bit sad he went so far, but didn't actually get to touch down on the giant ball of cheese. And low-key, I do feel really bad for the guy. Then once Buzz and Neil were done on the surface, they blasted off, linked up with Mike, and then headed home. Then, a few days later, splashing into the water, they were met with a hero's welcome after they were watched live by 600 million or a billion or more people, depending on whose source you look at. Then somehow we kind of decided to never really go back except for a couple more trips, nor did we decide to colonize the moon, harvest any materials, or even try building anything cool out there. We just kind of forgot the technology and have never been back since. Or at least that's what we're told. And now the most important achievement of mankind is barely a footnote in history textbooks, and kids couldn't even probably tell you the year it happened. But when it is spoken about, we doubt whether or not it actually even happened. That's genuinely really sad. But I do believe that there is a reason for all of this, because when you review the testimonies of these men who went to the moon, as well as the transcripts of the trip, some very odd things are revealed, which causes a dark secret to begin to arise from the depths. Preamble and explanation out of the way, let's go to where this all began for me. As a kid, I heard rumors of Neil Armstrong reporting seeing cities and structures and people on the moon, and I thought about this a few days ago and I was like, I gotta be wrong, right? But I can't believe I'm saying this. There is a lot of evidence that that may have been just what happened. And it goes beyond just Apollo 11 and Neil's team. We can trace this back as at least Apollo 8. So let's begin there with them. From December 21st through the 27th, Apollo 8 departed Earth, circled around the moon 10 times, and then came back. It was supposed to be a test run for some of the important things that Apollo 11 would have to do to successfully land upon and depart from the moon. Seems simple enough, was a success, and no one really talks about it very much. But there is some interesting data in the transcripts that are part of the reason why I don't think it's ever brought up. And that's where we're going to begin, on page 233 of the Apollo 8 transcripts. Feel free to read along at home, kids. There's a link in the description. Anders is going to tell you when he alights from the first LM, pick up all the gold. I think he doesn't have to. He knows it all right now. Didn't you hear him? Ye geologists of the world, I see a few grabens, a few slipped discs. There's a strange light down there. Is it a bonfire? It might be campfires. How does it look? I think you're going to be able to see it pretty soon. Well, I'll put it in and wait for it. Okay, do I have the computer? Yes. Enter the blank. Are you going to read this off for me? Yes. What is it? I'm sorry, what was that? I thought I was mistaken about this, so I read upwards and afterwards for context, and there is none. This is exactly the conversation that happens. It's like if you and a good buddy were driving down the street, and in the middle of a conversation, you break off because the most unexpected thing just happened. Like a crackhead backflipping off the roof of a house for $1. It's a total conversation breaker, completely out of context, and I really don't get it. It's allegedly only referenced a single time in the transcripts, but I find that that may not be true. It's infamous at this point that at least 2 minutes of the Apollo 11 transcripts are missing, but I don't think they are alone in that regard. It would appear that when reviewing the transcripts for Apollo 8, there are strange timestamps where seconds pass where that doesn't make sense, as in it looks like a period of 6 seconds passes between that first sentence and then when the response comes, which makes me think that whoever been saying this might have said something else, and then we continue to the other guy's conversation, but that something else was taken out. I don't know, that's just something I suspect, but it wouldn't be surprising based on the Apollo 11 transcripts. This is exceptionally odd, obviously, but it doesn't tip the scales too far on its own. Maybe it was an optical illusion, right? But it is worth mentioning once again, this is the only time this is referenced, and I feel like this is the sort of thing you would bring up again, so that itself might suggest something else was taken out. It is exceptionally odd, and to say campfires is too specific, I think, for it to be some optical illusion. After all, you can't even see stars from the moon's surface, supposedly. There is something else that I want to add, and that's that if this is the sort of thing you saw, and it's supposed to be in this guy's view in a couple of seconds that you're talking to about it, I would expect for him to have brought it up again, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't. So I find that odd, and it seems to imply that maybe there was a redaction there, but I don't know. That's just me theorizing here and speculating. I want to preface this by saying I have found these without reading through all of the transcripts, so there's very possibly other strange things that are mentioned, and I do ask you that if you're interested to go read them and see what you can find. It's just that they're hundreds of pages and that would take me hundreds of hours to really go through. That being said, just skimming the surface, we know that in Apollo 10 there are more of these bizarre references, and this one's even stranger somehow, because even the most ardent fluoride drinker would probably go, huh, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. To preface though, the goal of the Apollo 10 mission was to basically be the trial run for Apollo 11. We're gonna do everything except for set foot on the moon. Okay, great. So they're gonna get closer than anyone else has before. After all, we don't want Apollo 11 to blow up on international television because that would be really awkward, not to mention incredibly saddening. Thus, the logic would be that if something odd is going on the moon, these guys would have an even better chance of seeing it because they're getting closer and going further than anyone else has to this point. Which is why I'm beginning to suspect that someone might have been curious about what these anomalies were and may have known that these existed, and perhaps the purpose of the Apollo missions was more so to uncover what these anomalies may be. But enough yapping, let's get to the transcripts. By the way, all these transcripts can be found on the NASA website, so I'm not pulling this from some Yahoo in his backyard who likes making up fake things. The following section of this oddness begins on page 241 and is an interruption to a previous conversation about brownies, kid you not, landing radars, and helium tanks. So once again, a complete deviation from the previous conversation, like the Apollo 8 transcripts. I'm going to read these as whole conversations though, so you don't think I'm pulling a fast one on you and taking things out of context. You don't know when AOS is ... do you? Yes, I've got it written down. It's 102.21 for me. Okay, stand by for BATs 1 and 3. High voltage off. Reset. BATs 1, 2. Boy, that sure is weird music. We're gonna have to find out about that. Nobody will believe us. Yes, it's a whistling, you know? Like an outer spacey type thing. Yes, or like after you separate from the Gemini, you have the RCS with 25. Yes, but the Gemini shell was a lot sturdier and stronger than ... to the walls, you can see the freaking walls. I never would have taken my helmet off in that thing. I mean you ... What the heck is that gurgling noise? I don't know, but I'll tell you that eerie music is what's bothering me. You know that? Gosh darn, I heard it too. You know, that was funny. That's just like something from outer space, really. Who's gonna believe it? Nobody. Shall we tell them about it? I don't know. We'll have to think about it some. Added context, I believe these guys thought these conversations were private, but clearly they're not. Nobody. Shall we tell them about it? I don't know. We ought to think about it some. Did you hear it, Tom? Yes, I heard it. Yes, he heard it. Yes. Heck, I just want to get out of this suit. ... back together? Sure does, doesn't it? Yes. We're still holding our little ... delta P, so probably pretty good. Staging, jarring about that staging. Well, I'll tell you, babe, we was moving in 3 dimensions at the same time. You know, if your eyes were a photograph, it'd be great. That's so sus. I'm going to lock on. There's our landing radar. She's a 50 degrees. You really have to be careful with this film. When you don't have any left, there's the one Jack marked that he won. I'll get it for him. Hey, when do we fire the helium tanks? Not yet, babe. You want some more brownies? No. Go hungry. That music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? You hear that? That whistling sound? Yes. Woo! Say your ... Did you hear that whistling sound too? Yes, sounds like, you know, outer space type music. I wonder what it is. Hey Tom, is your insulation all burned off here on the front side of your window over here? Yes, mine's all burned off. Isn't that weird? Eerie, John? Yes, I got it too. See who was outside. Who? You marked that set features, Gino. I'm going to fix us some grape juice, okay? There's 2 things I want to add. I saw a recording of this video, and in that recording, they start in this second section and they seem to ignore the other previous references to the creepiness, where it clearly distinguishes that this is not coming from them. Just something to put out there for refuting the slopaganda. These are beyond strange, but I want to first make note of this to dispel any doubters below. The music being referenced is clearly not being played by the group, for many reasons, including the fact that they don't know where the noises are coming from and are discussing how weird and kind of creeped out they are about it. But even eerier is that later on in this flight, the guys do play a song themselves, and the song is named Greensleeves, and we know that because there's a section where the transcript in parentheses says Greensleeves starts playing. However, that added context of the song being played is never added in the transcript, not before or after, which gives more credence to the notion that this song is not coming from anyone on board or back on land in Houston. Even stranger is that, much like Apollo 8, where you have this weird sighting, or in this case, this weird noise, never again did they reference it out of this section. I would expect this to be something that you go back to like, hey guys, remember that really weird music? I'm hearing it again, or what was that? Or maybe some follow-up where, guys, it was just some weird glitch. Well, That doesn't happen, like I said, which makes me once again think that something else is being redacted, because why isn't this followed up upon? So knowing this is not the astronauts' music and knowing how far away from Earth they are, what realistically could be making this noise? Because it's almost like something around them or even on the moon is broadcasting a signal to them, or is it emitting the music in some way we don't understand? I don't know, that's the impression I get from reading this. It is confusing, but it is worth putting out there. I'm not gonna speculate what it is. I'm just gonna leave you with the information that I've uncovered. I do know the prevailing excuse from the MSM or the slop media, or the slopaganda, whatever you wanna call it, is that somehow a radio operator or a satellite is broadcasting a signal by accident to the Apollo 10 spacecraft, which, come on guys, there's gotta be a better excuse than that. In terms of space technology and understanding, I put myself right here in the bell curve, that's fine. But that seems like the most mid-wit excuse I've ever heard. You're gonna tell me that the most important mission in the history of mankind up to this point, the one that is the precursor for the mission that is going to land men on the moon, the Apollo missions, which have cost the American taxpayer billions of dollars and full percentage points of the GDP of our nation. Yeah, anyone can broadcast a signal to that thing, you know, like weird, creepy space music. Are you kidding me? How dumb do we look? I can't accept that as the most reasonable excuse. And there's actually some visual recordings of the men on board of just a portion of when this event occurred. And it shows no music. There's this loud ringing from the spaceship that covers over almost all the sound, including the men's voices. So we get no more understanding from it in that video either. And to this day, I haven't seen a great excuse for what this could be. And I would like to know more, because if there was a genuine reason for this happening, it should be pretty apparent. Further, the notion that you have all of these different websites and media outlets parroting the exact same excuse. Come on, guys. Seriously, I try not to use the guy in his backyard doing weird things as my source, so you shouldn't use him as your source either. Not to mention, we're in the middle of a quote-unquote Cold War and a space race with another spacefaring nation that is seeking to put men on the moon. So we're going to leave our men in the tiny tin can rattling through space vulnerable enough where you can send signals and broadcast signals into this spaceship? Are you kidding me? What is this? If that were the case, then NASA should be torn apart and rebuilt, because if they're that dumb then, I don't want to know what they're doing now. But I do suspect that it's not as simple as, oh, it's a broadcasting error. But that I leave up for you. However, this all being said, if these were the only references to weird things in the Apollo missions, man, maybe I could just say, hey, you know what? I'll look past it. It was a glitch. It was a glitch. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But it's not. It's not even close to the only weird references in the Apollo missions. Not only that, it's not even close to the weirdest references in the Apollo missions. So let's get on to the most famous mission, the Apollo 11 mission, and let's see what these men had to say about their time traveling to, circling, landing, and on the way back from the moon. Because Apollo 11 is not only where things get more strange, but possibly even more obvious. Many don't know, and some know, that the Apollo 11 original footage and TV transmission was taped over and lost, according to NASA, which I don't believe. If you were to look that up, the clanker answer would be that, you know, it wasn't taped over, and then you read the actual answer and it was. So I tried looking at the sources that say that the original files were not taped over, and they all said that they were taped over. So convoluted, but I think it was worth putting out there, because if you look it up, it's gonna say they weren't taped over. It's also gonna deny that there's 2 minutes missing, both of which things are verifiably true with enough research. Just important to get that out there, because there's already a precedent, as we've referenced, of Apollo missions, specifically Apollo 11, as verified things are missing from it. We have not been told the full truth. So then what they do say is even stranger, because if this is what the transcripts contain, then what has been taken out? And in fact, we're gonna later get an answer to that. It's brown brown all around. There's no doubt which way that little crater hit. Here's that same one going by again. Neil, remember that bright job? Yes. Man, there's white stuff all over, and it's black right around the rim. Hey, well, while this thing's rolling over here, I'm going to take a pee. I'm going to go pee. 180 if you don't mind. That's a spectacular crater. Did you shoot some pictures while you were over there? No, it's just going by. We'd better get it later. There will be better times if the dang antenna isn't in the way. Boy, there must be nothing more desolate than to be inside one of these small craters, these conical ones. People that live in there probably never get out. Yes, I think you're right. Boy, you can really see the slumping though. You can see where it's all gathered down in the bottom in the corner, you know, on the edge where a lot of the white stuff has dribbled on down, and evidently it gets covered over after a while with a darker layer.
What an odd thing to say.
That does seem pretty odd to me as well, Bart, considering the previous campfire and bonfire references that the Apollo 8 mission made, and later words attributed to Armstrong. But it does continue. If you thought that Armstrong was being taken out of context, the men on board suggest something even more indicative of both humanoids and structures existing on the moon. See the monocular? I don't either. Is there one? Well, a crater. There go Sidewinder and Diamondback. Gosh, if you ever saw checkpoints in your life, those are it. But we don't get to see them. You don't? No. We roll over right here at this little, well, you see Boot Hill coming up right here. And just beyond it, that's that crater right on track there. The big one? That's Mount Maryland. Past Boot Hill? No, Duke Hill. Duke Hill. No, I'm sorry, ... That's Duke Island. Duke Island. Oh gosh, look at that Moltke. He's my favorite. Look at that son of a gun. You see all those roads, triangular roads leading right past him? Yes, that's us, I guess, huh? Yes. There's a crater 130 over there. I can't quite see 129, but I can't quite see 130. In this entire transcript, which is over 240 pages long, the only time the word road is used is in this context twice. What? Also, the Apollo 11 transcript is almost 300 pages shorter than the Apollo 10 transcript. Seems a little odd to me, but I'm just saying, where do those other 300 pages go? After all, they were up there for just about the same amount of time. Honestly, one is pretty hard pressed to talk their way out of this one. They're clearly talking about roads. They say the exact same word twice. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to see it myself and I haven't been to the moon yet, so I don't know exactly what they are seeing, but I imagine a road in a triangular pattern going about this rock. Who knows? It could be anything, but for certain they are discussing a road. He doesn't say they look like roads. He doesn't say they seem to be roads. He says, and I quote, "You see all those roads, triangular roads leading right past him." So there's no imprecision of language and there's no illusion. It seems like he's talking about roads. Thus, I think it's fair to say that something to some regard is awry. We will be returning to Apollo 11 shortly, but as far as I'm aware, this is the peak of strangeness in the transcripts, beyond the fact of how short they are. So we will come back to them later, but the official transcript ends here. Therefore, let's go to Apollo 14, where there are other strange references in the official transcripts. Yes, that's one of our targets. That's one of Farouk's favorite craters. Pretty dang interesting one too. Really an interesting one, huh? That one looks like got a rugged one right out here with central peaks. ... Sure does. Really got a very complex central structure. It's got one of the biggest central peaks around. It's a very unusual crater, but there are some dark areas in that Farouk has gone on record as saying they are dikes. Hi son, there's one right down there. Just shows how it dominates the whole photograph. Just an extremely bright crater. Sun angle just isn't high enough for you to see it here. Yes, they're mining it, I think. I do appreciate how even the transcript adds a question mark there after they say they're mining it. And then the conversation goes afterwards. What's the name of that one? It has no name. I've called it the bright one. This is Langmack. That we're just going over right down here. I really look forward to seeing people try and wriggle their way out of this one. Pretty darn clear what he's saying. He has no minced words about it. And then pairing this with later reports that NASA is accused, as we talked about ad nauseum, of redacting the Apollo 11 transcripts, there are some questions we need to ask. Specifically, there's an article I found that references a very odd account I had never heard before, and it's ridiculous. You gotta hear this. When referring to NASA taping over old film, they say the following. It's believed that this was done as a way to help the agency save money while recording telemetry information for space explorations done during this time period. Some theories suggest that there could be some secret unofficial copies taken of the landing when the signal reached Australia at a NASA center there. There are also, I hate that term, conspiracy theories that believe that this was done only on a staged movie set or in a military base, which is why the original tapes were destroyed. Recently, in 2015, a home in Pittsburgh was found to house many old NASA computers that still had data and tapes in them, including 325 magnetic tapes similar to the ones that captured the Apollo 11 landing. Two things. Whose house was this? Because you need an immense amount of space to store these computers, and also they were just sitting inside of the computer still 60 years later. What's going on with that? I would like to know a lot more information there. Also, how did NASA find out about this and how did they get the rights to do what they're about to do? NASA quickly destroyed these computers and of the tapes as they were determined to be too difficult to convert and recover due to their being covered in mold. It's believed though that these tapes were not connected to the lost Apollo tapes due to their deteriorating condition. NASA has admitted that the tapes were probably destroyed in some way due to space and budget constraints. First of all, the budget narrative is bullcrap and annoys the crap out of me. You're gonna tell me that NASA couldn't afford to clean some tapes of a little bit of mold that may contain the most significant thing that mankind has ever done, our most prized achievement, you couldn't check to see if they were the right tapes and maybe preserve them because you didn't have enough money? NASA got 17.896 billion taxpayer dollars in 2015. I can go buy a tape converter at the local store. Are you kidding me? NASA has access to all the technology to convert these films and to take care of them. So what do you mean you don't have enough money? That's bullcrap. Also, why'd you go and destroy the computers? Those are valuable pieces of technology. And the tapes that were in them? That's what we call a cover-up. You guys are not making yourselves look better. At least say the house caught on fire. That would have been better. Nothing to do with the Apollo 11 landing. My goodness, how dumb do they think we are? So keeping that in mind about Apollo 11, let's continue with some non-NASA sources that I've found on the matter of strange sightings on the moon. Because if we pair the transcript I read with something that was found in a book by Richard Watson that was published by ASSK Publishing in 1987, although there's very little data on this book, we are going to learn something incredibly bizarre. All right, the following quote from this book comes from a man named Christopher Kraft, who ended up being the director of NASA for a period, and he made these comments allegedly after leaving NASA. Now, the fact that I can't find basically any other references to this online goes one of two ways. Either it's made up or it's not, but it's worth noting that neither Neil nor Aldrin nor this Christopher Kraft guy ever came out and said that these were lies, nor took any legal action to try and get these claims removed from the book. So I'm gonna let them stand as they are, and you guys can interpret them as you wish. So here's a conversation that occurred between Houston in the redacted recordings of the Apollo 11 mission that we don't have, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and I guess by proxy Michael Collins because he's probably listening to this. During the transmission of the moon landing of Armstrong and Aldrin, who journeyed to the moon in an American spaceship, 2 minutes of silence occurred in which the image and sound were interrupted. NASA insisted that this problem was the result of one of the television cameras which overheated, thus interfering with the reception. This unexpected problem surprised even the most qualified of viewers who were unable to explain how in such a costly project one of the most essential elements could break down. An element which was to serve to convince the world of the level of technology which had been achieved by the United States. Sometime after the historic moon landing, Christopher Kraft, director of the base in Houston, made some surprising comments when he left NASA. The contents of these comments, which is included in the conversations, which were corroborated by hundreds of amateur radio operators who had connected their stations to the same frequency through which the astronauts transmitted during the 2-minute interruption, which was not as it seemed. NASA, Armstrong, and Aldrin with Cape Kennedy censored both image and sound. I say that there were other spaceships. Here is reproduced completely the dialogue between the American astronauts and Control Center. Armstrong and Aldrin. Those are giant things. No, no, no. This is not an optical illusion. No one is going to believe this. Wait, what? What? What the heck is happening? What's wrong with you? They're here under the surface. Houston, what's there? Muffled noise. A mission interrupted. Interference control calling Apollo 2. We saw some visitors. They were there for a while observing the instruments. Repeat your last information. I say that there were other spaceships. They're lined up on the other side of the crater. Repeat, repeat. Let us sound this orbita ... in 625 to 5 ... automatic relay connected ... My hands are shaking so badly I can't do anything. Film it? Gosh, if these dang cameras have picked up anything, what then? Have you picked up anything? I didn't film any at hand. 3 shots of the saucers or whatever they were that were ruining the film. Control here. Are you on your way? What is the uproar with the UFOs over? They've landed there. There they are. They are watching us. The mirrors, have you set them up? Yes, they're in the right place, but whoever made those spaceships surely can come tomorrow and remove them. Over and out. Christopher Kraft, chief of the Houston base, commented, the reaction of our men has been very unusual, but I don't doubt that space influenced them in everything. The example of Armstrong's modesty is not without impact, and Aldrin's altruism provides food for thought. In any case, I think that they all had something in common as they came back to Earth better men than when they left. Okay, these are crazy comments. Gonna be hard to verify. I'd be curious if you guys can find anything on this, but it is worth noting that this is not without its total unprecedentedness. There are photos taken from the moon that we have seen that show things like the spire, or that show things like a very odd light in one of the shots that's been posed as being a camera glare, but it doesn't really appear that way, and I've taken a lot of photos and edited a lot of film, among countless other things. So there is an argument that these men really did see something that we don't know, and since we don't have the evidence, that we can't truly comprehend. I would like to be able to dispel this theory in this conversation, but the only way to do that would be if we were shown the film, the full, unedited, unredacted film, just like some other events. And we haven't gotten that. And not having it only gives theories like this, if they were untrue, way more credence. So that we have to say, this could be true, because we don't have the proof that we need. That being said, I'm gonna remain skeptical on all the information I get and do my best to vet it. But like I said, we don't have the footage, and apparently they're destroying footage and machinery that could house the original Apollo 11 stuff. So I don't know. That's up for you to decide if this is real or not. And the corroborating evidence that really surrounds this whole event that something might have gone on does exist. There are strange and unexplainable phenomena that we see related to the Apollo missions. For instance, these men were on the moon. They just made the greatest achievement in mankind's entire history. And they're jumping, they're doing all these fun things on the moon. They come back, they are somber, and they look like they're in the principal's office getting yelled at by the principal as their parents are on their way to yell at them as well. They look like they just did something wrong. And there are several different forensic psychologists and people who analyze body language who have done videos on this interview of Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and Neil Armstrong, and have come on to say that, yeah, something weird's going on here and these guys are lying to some regard. We also know that there is the famous clip of Neil Armstrong refusing to swear that he landed on the moon. And Neil Armstrong is a character in and of himself. He is a Freemason from what I'm aware of, and that would be a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But the fact that he is afraid to swear in the Bible really does make a lot of sense with that connection. I've had some experience with the Freemasons, and this is the sort of thing they won't do, considering they worship Satan, but that's a different topic. And we also have later clips from Buzz Aldrin that don't help out anybody's case in dispelling these rumors. It's worth viewing in its own glory, so let me play it for you now.
On the moon. We can visit other people with their habitation. We can keep track. If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help. We can join with. Together we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there.
Plus the fact that Armstrong refused to go to NASA's 40th anniversary reunion for the men who landed on the moon. Adding on top of that, Armstrong's infamous quote about the truth.
A group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
All right, guys, I'm recording this outro. I had one more thing I was going to add, which is about the Russian inquest, but I accidentally butterfingers deleted it. So I thought I would just end it here and just say thank you guys so much for watching, and there's one coming after.